This isn't just about horsepower.
It's about the culture behind the wheel.
From the latest automotive headlines
To the machines we love, to the music, movies, and moments driving in the lifestyle.
This is Driveline with Justin Basic. If it's got an engine, an attitude, or a story worth telling, we're on it. Call in. Leave your take. 833-3DL-SHOW. This is Driveline. So let's strap in and let's roll.
Driveline. Back from a sort of summer break, if you will. I didn't really want to take a break, but they made me. They being the voices in my head saying, stop, stop. So this past weekend was the Moon Eyes USA open house. This is an event that happens every July. I always put it on my calendar as soon as they announce it in May, and then I never go. And that's because getting to Santa Fe Springs from the West Valley is not fun. I was reminded of this when I interviewed Vic at his barbershop a couple of months ago. But after I visited Moon Eyes in Hawaii, and I really liked the outfit they had there, I wanted to go, so I did, and I enjoyed it. They had the Hot Rod Trio there performing live music. Frogtown Brewery brought their Moon Beer, which I really was hoping they'd sell in the cans, but they only had it on tap there. But if you visit them in Frogtown, you can get a little 4-pack of cans of the Moon Beer, which I hear is quite good. I didn't get to try it. But all the peeps from Moon Eyes Japan were out there. I didn't see my friend from Hawaii, who I really wanted to talk to because he still hasn't posted the photo he took of us promoting the show that's going on in Yokohama in December. So I want that picture up. And there was a pinstriper there. It was a really good free car show. People, I guess, were lined up there on the street on Norwalk Boulevard there since from dawn, from what I heard. And lots of old 57 Chevys, bombs, gassers, lowriders, old pickup trucks. Really, really great representation of the culture out there. And there was a slight moment that I'm glad I caught on video for evidence where I probably hear a little bit less good than I did before, but it's all in good fun. 833-335-7469. Call me anytime and leave a voicemail on the Driveline.
Yo, Driveline, I love the show so much. Big fan, man. I was just wondering if you were aware that on Friday nights in Burbank, this restaurant called Bob's Big Boy always hosts a car night, and there's so many classic cars that pull up into the lot. And I was wondering, will Driveline actually maybe do a pop-up with some listeners at Bob's Big Boy on a Friday night? Let me know. I don't know. I'd love to go if you went, and I'd love to support and come meet the community out there. Appreciate you, Driveline. Love the show. Love listening. Take it easy. Peace.
Well, since I haven't been living under a rock, yes, I am aware that Bob's Big Boy has a car show every Friday night in Burbank. Not Toluca Lake. Everyone wants to say it's Toluca Lake. It's in Burbank. It's on the east side of Clybourne Avenue. It's in Burbank, so thank you for calling it Burbank. But yes, that is a fantastic idea, and we will do it Friday night, July 24th. I'd appreciate everyone listening. If you're in the Los Angeles area, bring a car, don't bring a car. Just come say hi. Get out on the streets. Let's show them that people are listening. That would be a really good treat. And yes, I've been to Bob's Big Boy a few times. I famously brought the car from Green Day's Boulevard of Broken Dreams video there about a year ago. So yeah, that was fun. I'm willing to do it again. And let me know on Instagram at driveline.show which car of mine do you think I should bring. So yeah, it's July now, and with July comes road trip season, and normally these past couple of weeks I be making my way back east on the road, but as I said, I've already forgone the road trip and flew over to Rhinelander, home of the Hodag. But when I do drive across the country, I started to notice something very peculiar, and this is something that I think is lost on a lot of people who never travel or even move to a new city. It's when you go to different parts of the country, especially in summer, this is noticeable. It is light and dark at completely different times. And this was, it really set in when I visited, Idaho Falls in July of 2021, I think it was. And I had been driving. This was a series of 15-hour days on the road, but I got to this really cruddy hotel on the river in Idaho Falls, and I was just kind of cruising around getting something to eat, making my way back to my car, which at the time was pulling a fairly decent-sized trailer full of my belongings back from the Midwest. And I looked at my phone, and it was like 8:50 at night, and the sun was still visible. I don't know, I just think it's weird, man. So with the passing of the equinox, or not the equinox, the summer solstice a few weeks ago, and apparently the summer solstice, while it is the most amount of daylight you see in the year, it is not the time of year for the latest sunset. That usually comes around June 30th, July 1st. So just going through my phone, I went through a couple of cities just to show between the time zones and how far north you are from the equator, just the difference it makes and what time it gets dark out. And I'm a big fan of getting dark later. So Idaho Falls, around July 1st, the sunset at 9:12 p.m., whereas in the Los Angeles Miracle Mile, it set over an hour earlier at 8:08 p.m. The latest I've ever personally witnessed is in northern Michigan, just north of Rhinelander, home of the Hodag, in a city called Paulding, that is right on the border between Central and Eastern time. So whereas by my cabin, it usually gets dark just before 9 o'clock, but you cross into Eastern time, you're pretty much all in the same geographic location, but you're in a different time zone, so it gets later. So in Paulding, Michigan, the sun sets at 9:53 p.m., which I think is amazing. My searching for the latest sunset in the continental United States, because we know you could argue that in Alaska it's light pretty much 24/7 in the middle of summer, but in the continental U.S., latest sunset occurs in a city called Fortuna, North Dakota, being situated far west in the central time zone and right up against Canada. The sun sets at 10:03 p.m. And I couldn't get an official earliest sunset of summer, but from what I could tell, looking around and what I know, I found in Yuma, Arizona, the sun sets at only 7:49 p.m. So we're looking at over a 2-hour difference in sunsets, depending on where you are in the time zone and how north you are. And all of this is relevant right now because all over my newsfeed, and I found a story that made this all relevant, but I had to keep redoing it because even as I'm recording this on Tuesday, July 14th at 5:44 p.m., there's new news from like an hour ago that's already changed. Permanent daylight saving time bill approved by House. The House on Tuesday passed with broad bipartisan support legislation that would make daylight saving time permanent nationwide. The legislation now heads to the Senate. President Trump has backed the legislation, arguing in a Truth Social post that the bill is so important that hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year by people, cities, states being forced to change their clocks. And he's going to work very hard to see the Sunshine Protection Act signed into law so that people could stop worrying about the clock and all the work and money that is spent on this ridiculous twice-yearly production. And it would be a nice win for the Republican Party, he says. So, the House measure was introduced by Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida, and it's long been popular in Florida, where supporters say the extended evening daylight could boost tourism and outdoor recreation. Floridians and Americans across the country are tired of the biannual time change, and the evidence is clear that permanent daylight saving time could improve public health, reduce traffic accidents, lower crime, and encourage more outdoor activity. Ending the clock change is a common-sense reform that will improve everyday life for millions of Americans, Buchanan previously said in a statement. But there's two sides to this, because the story that I had printed just yesterday states standard time could become permanent in U.S. under new bill, with some exceptions. So there is a new... I'm going to paraphrase this because it's another long article, and I don't want to drone on about time changes for an hour, especially when no one's talking about changing the clock, as it is not March or November. But I like sun. I want it to be as late as possible. I would move to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan just so it is light out until 10 p.m. But there are people who don't want this. They want to be on permanent standard time. And they introduced the bipartisan Sunshine for Our Kids Act. And the argument is that standard time is better for our health. Most efforts in Congress and throughout the U.S. have been focused on making daylight saving time permanent. Nearly 20 states have passed legislation to observe daylight saving time year-round. Only Hawaiian parts of Arizona observe standard time year-round. The Sunshine for Our Kids Act would make standard time permanent throughout the U.S. However, the bill would allow states to make daylight saving time permanent should they choose to do so. At the time, only states are only permitted to observe standard time year-round. They're arguing that observing daylight saving time in winter would make it dark in the morning, and children would have to walk to school in the dark, which is easily rectified by a later start time. But this article did provide another chart, much like the one I came up with on my own, focusing on other major cities. If we stayed on standard time, what the earliest and latest sunsets would be in the or the earliest sunrises and latest sunsets would be in the summer on each. Chicago's earliest sunrise and latest sunset right now is 5:15 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. If we switch to permanent standard time, this is what I don't like. The sunrise would go to 4:15 a.m., which is way too early. And it would only be light out until 7:30 at night in the summer. Green Bay, a little bit further north, currently sits at 5:07 a.m. sunrise and 8:41 p.m. sunset, which would naturally move to 4 a.m. and 7:41 p.m. And here in Los Angeles, it currently gets light at its earliest at 5:41 a.m. and dark at 8:08 p.m., which I think is already too early, and we would see an earlier sunrise at 4:41 a.m., which is when my alarm is set, and it would be dark at 7:08 p.m., which would be about an hour from now. I wanted to propose something called super daylight saving time, where we stay on this time in the winter and then go forward an even hour further ahead in winter, but I don't know. It gets dark too early in Los Angeles. We do not use or support the use of AI on this show. If you remember a while back, I was looking for information on the Corvair used in the Unfrosted movie, so I Googled Seinfeld Corvair, and it gave me this from the AI overview. The Seinfeld episode The Dealership features a Corvair as part of a car dealership subplot. The episode follows Jerry's attempts to get a good deal on a car, with the Corvair being one of the vehicles he considers. In the episode, Jerry is trying to leverage his friendship with David Putty to get a better deal on a car. The dealership has a variety of vehicles, including the Corvair, which Jerry initially considers. According to Haggerty, the Corvair's appearance on Seinfeld was a way to use a vehicle that has a distinct history to make the show's car dealership storyline more interesting. The car's presence in the episode is a running gag as Jerry and the other characters interact with it during their dealership adventure.
I love the Corvair.
Good news, we got a 900 in black. That's the hot color. High five.
I just think of Kramer taking the salesman to see if it really is unsafe at any speed, but there's this guy now in Canada having a much bigger AI chatbot issues than I am. Dealership revoked offer to buy back customers BMW, blaming wayward AI chatbot. After his 2021 BMW required major repairs, Zach Giacomelli decided last month he wanted to sell it back to BMW Toronto, the same dealership from which he bought the car used in 2023. At first, the buyback process seemed easy. After submitting an online inquiry, Giacomelli got a text from Quinn at BMW Toronto, who is eager to help.
Hi, Zachary. This is Quinn from BMW Toronto.
Quinn, who appeared to be a dealership rep, reached out by text and offered to buy back his BMW for $27,000, just enough to cover what Giacomelli still owed on the car.
I will come out at zero. I'm like, this is happening. I was so glad.
But that good feeling didn't last, because shortly after, the dealership revoked the offer, telling Giacomelli Quinn was an AI chatbot, and the offer it made was a mistake.
Okay, I'm going to call you Giacomelli still because I like that better. He said his shock turned to anger when the dealership informed him the actual buyback offer would be at best $20,000, a drop of more than $7,000 from what Quinn had promised.
I was devastated. If they're going to be replacing their employees' jobs with AI, then they need to be honoring what that AI says.
Canadian law already has established that companies can be held liable if AI chatbots dole out bad information. In a 2024 case, Air Canada was forced to honor a fare rebate after its chatbot provided a passenger with incorrect advice about bereavement fares. The airline argued before the British Columbia Civil Resolution Tribunal that the chatbot was a separate legal entity that is responsible for its own actions. But the tribunal disagreed, saying Air Canada was ultimately responsible. Part of Giacomelli's frustration stemmed from the fact that he had no idea he was communicating with AI. Quinn never revealed its true identity, according to text exchanges examined by CBC News. When Quinn initially offered $27,162.79 for the BMW, Giacomelli countered with $28,500 just to see if he could get a better deal. Quinn sounded optimistic, texting that the team would consider it and that $28,500 sounds reasonable. By the time the dealership revoked Quinn's original offer, Giacomelli had not yet accepted it, as he was waiting to hear back about his counteroffer. Even so, Walker said Giacomelli could still argue that he had an agreement because near the end of the text exchange, Quinn set up a physical meeting at the dealership to seal the deal. "Let's lock it in today at 3:30, the AI texted. After CBC News reached out to BMW Toronto, it reinstated Quinn's original offer of $27,162.79. BMW Toronto sales manager Scott Shadbolt told CBC News in a phone interview that the dealership wanted to do right by Giacomelli. Shadbolt said that due to misinformation from a human employee, Quinn misinterpreted the amount Giacomelli owed on the car, $27,162.79, as the amount BMW would pay to buy back the vehicle. The AI bot ran with that, misunderstood the message, he said. Shadbolt said Quinn was never programmed to independently negotiate contracts, only to relay human-generated buyback offers. Moving forward, he said, only human employees will present customers with such offers. Shadbolt also said that BMW Toronto is making changes to ensure customers know when they're interacting with AI. So, I mean, isn't the point of using AI is that it learns on its own and doesn't do what you tell it to? Isn't that the I and AI? More slightly dystopian AI-related news. How flock cameras wrongly tracked me for days, not me, but the author, over stolen plates and sent the police after me.
I gotta tell you this at first. How come I'm getting
the reason you have 4 caps here is because your license plate is registered as stolen license plates in our system.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
On an otherwise normal Sunday afternoon in late June, I decided, not me, the author, Joel Feder, who is basically runs all the content at the drive. I decided to take the $155,000 Range Rover I was testing that week out to run some errands with my wife. Little did I know that choice would complete a technological chain linking surveillance cameras, AI, and law enforcement that led to me and my wife being surrounded by police, hands on their guns, in a Kohl's parking lot in suburban Minnesota. After dropping off our Amazon returns, we'd just gotten back in the Range Rover and reversed maybe 2 feet out of the spot when 4 cop cars came flying out of nowhere and boxed us in. The officers jumped out and started shouting. It's a situation that can quickly and frequently turn bad, so as unprepared as I was, I followed their orders, got out with my hands up, and tried to figure out what the hell was happening. Eventually, after a tense hour, I did. The Plymouth Police Department had been tracking me for days using flock license plate cameras, waiting for the right moment to strike because they thought I'd stolen the Range Rover. And the reason I was ID'd as a dangerous car thief was a simple data error made 2,000 miles away in California, creating an edge case within an edge case that Flock's AI camera network was unable to handle.
Hello, sir. Can you come out to me, please? Sure. Yes. Is it just you and the wife?
Yeah.
Come on, please, for me.
Both of us?
Both of them, yep. Are you armed at all?
No.
No? Okay, is this your car?
It's complicated. Can I explain it?
You can explain it, yes.
I'm an automotive journalist.
Okay.
So I'm the director of content and product for thedrive.com. If I can get my phone. Can I get my phone?
Yeah, you can get your phone. What's the drive?
It's an automotive media website. That's me right there. In the glove box that says this car is registered and I'm a journalist.
Do you mind if we take a look at that?
Sure. Can I get it?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing in the car. No other people in the car.
Okay.
I tried explaining what the drive is, what I do for a living, and how I could be driving a 6-figure luxury SUV that didn't belong to me. A confused look crossed his face. Yeah, I'm not a car guy, he said. Fortunately, one of the other officers had heard of us. I asked point blank, what's going on here and why are we being detained? The plates on the car are stolen, the officer said. My face must have twisted in disbelief because he continued saying that they weren't sure whether the car itself or just the plates were stolen. This made absolutely no sense. Car companies keep meticulous track of the fleets they loan out to the media. The vehicles all have special manufacturer or dealer plates that are logged every time one enters or exits. The officers eventually ran the Range Rover's VIN, and it came back clean. But in their view, the plates were definitely stolen. Before I could even process that, another officer dropped the big surprise. They'd actually been tracking me around town for a few days via flock cameras. But they kept losing the trail, so when the camera alerted them that the Range Rover had been spotted turning into a Kohl's that morning, they quickly set up their ambush and waited for me and my wife to walk out of the store and get to the SUV. I was blown away, but somehow still within enough to ask if I could see the camera footage. One of the officers pulled out his phone, opened the Flock app, and showed me 2 photos, a wide shot of the Range Rover going through the intersection and a zoomed-in view of the New Jersey license plate, which clearly reads 3410 DTM and says vehicle manufacturer along the bottom. I tried to explain that I had no idea why a license plate on a press car would be flagged like this. Can you get Range Rover on the phone? The officer asked, which was a tall order on a Sunday. As I started dialing, he added that the plate was reported stolen by a Jaguar Land Rover dealership in Los Angeles. After a few tries, I managed to get someone at Jaguar Land Rover on the phone and handed the call off to the officer, who spoke with them for about 10 minutes. He hung up, came back over to me with the explanation that clarified everything in an instant, but somehow made it worse. The New Jersey plates that were allegedly stolen from the LA dealer were 3403 DTM, not 3410 DTM. But when the police report was created and the plate was entered into Flock's system, it was just recorded as 34 DTM. Just the large 5 characters, no little number in the middle, and Flock's AI tech wasn't registering that non-standard little number when it began picking up the Range Rover around town. It just saw 34 DTM in large type and started alerting local police. So, the thing about dealer plates, which I run on a few of my cars, and manufacturer plates, is with my dealer license, I have one license plate number no matter how many dealer plates I get. It's just the license of my business. So they're all the same number. And then the differentiator is there will be, like, at least in California, it'll say on the tiny numbers on the far right side, like 1A, 2B, 34H. Basically, stupid hexadecimal-ish code for which number plate that is. And that's the only differentiation between your plates. So if you're a dealership or a manufacturer and you have 100 cars in the field, you're going to have 100 cars with essentially the same license plate. A lot of vehicles in Jaguar Land Rover's media fleet have a New Jersey manufacturer plate with the same alphanumeric structure, 34, and then a small number, DTM. Anywhere a police department has a partnership with Flock, any other Jaguar Land Rover owned car with the same plate structure, which is probably almost all of them, is going to get flagged as stolen. In fact, 4 other 34, 2 numbers, DTM cars were being tracked around Minnesota that week as well. I was just the first one to get nabbed. The only way to stop it would be for the LAPD to correct their initial report and update Flock's system, which Jaguar Land Rover was now racing to make happen following the phone call. He wanted me to drive straight home, park the Range Rover, and leave it there. A couple of days later, I got a copy of the police report that added a fun kicker to it all. Turns out the 3403 DTM plate that kicked everything off was in fact not stolen. One of the fleet vehicles bearing New Jersey 3403 DTM was used in a photo shoot in Los Angeles. That really makes it seem like that's all we do here. During the photo shoot, the license plate for the vehicle was misplaced. It read, the corporation had to report the plate as lost to law enforcement. The plate was reported as New Jersey 34 DTM instead of New Jersey 3403 DTM. So flock cameras have been a real little point of controversy as of late, and I've only found out about them since my trip home a few weeks ago. I've never really paid attention to them much here, but when you start seeing them in places that you've never seen them before, such as the neighborhood you grew up in, it was like, why are there these solar-powered black little surveillance cameras all over the place? You start to ask about them. And I honestly don't have any of them anywhere near my house here. The only place they are is kind of up on the hill by where all the HOAs are, which kind of made sense because it's, private gated community, they're going to have cameras, but seeing them in the regular old city back home was a little alarming. And there's two ways to look at these. For example, I was witness to, it turned out, it wound up being a hit and run, but basically I was first on scene to a pedestrian accident at Hollywood and Highland 2-3 months ago now at this point, and I got there, I saw a car partially run the red light, hit a pedestrian who was crossing the street on a walk. The guy fell on the street. The car was stopped. I was like, here we go. And as a good Samaritan first responder type, I pulled over to help, and I immediately got on the phone with 911. And while I was talking to 911 and trying to do a little bit of triage on this patient who's laying on the street, the woman who was driving the Jeep Compass, whose license plate I remember, it was 7, 3 numbers, 555. The 555 stuck with me. She gets back in her car, throws it in reverse, and just flies westbound on Hollywood Boulevard while I'm on the phone with 911. So I had a partial plate number, and I gave it to them. But could these flock cameras, they would have caught her car, they would have scanned a partial plate, they could have probably done a partial license plate search, and they probably could have picked her up within an hour. The last I heard, they never found this person. The lawyers of the injured and he himself reached out to me asking if I had any more video, and I had dash cam footage from my own car, which I'm always recording, and I sent it to them, but it didn't capture a license plate. So one could only hope that flock cameras could be used for good instead of evil, but in the case of all the stories we're hearing, it seems like they're doing more harm than good. But the lesson in all of that is, if you're ever in a Good Samaritan situation, immediately start recording with your phone, even before you call 911, because I probably could have got a face of the person and their license plate in full. So always be recording, just don't use AI. But it's funny because this other article came out just yesterday, and I like to think that this was related to the LAPD issue and the license plate getting reported stolen, because the headline from yesterday, Flock Safety says LAPD halting use of their license plate readers was a surprise. So safety concerns have led the Los Angeles Police Department to suspend the use of Flock Safety license plate readers. As reported by the Los Angeles Times, the LAPD signed a 3-year agreement with the Atlanta-based firm in July 2023, which expired over the weekend, coincidentally. In total, there are 138 Flock Safety operated pole-mounted cameras within Los Angeles. A statement provided to KTLA by the LAPD indicates that officers decided to make the difficult decision to suspend Flock access due to a lack of clarity regarding terms of data ownership, security, privacy, sharing, and breach notifications. The LAPD remains fully committed to using technology and investigative tools in a responsible, transparent, and accountable manner, a department spokesperson said, in order to advance public safety, including holding those responsible for committing crimes accountable, as well as deliver justice for victims, like people who get hit by cars, and those wrongly accused. We need to ensure the tools we use are governed by the highest standards of stewardship. We will continue to work in collaboration with all of our vendor partners, including Flock, to reach contractual agreements that are thoroughly documented and safeguard the interests of the LAPD and the city of Los Angeles and the Angelinos we serve, the statement continues. While law enforcement officials generally praise the technology for helping catch criminals, some members of the public argue that everyday non-criminal drivers are being surveilled and the data is being shared without their consent. One main concern is that personal information is being shared with the federal government, information that is used to conduct immigration enforcement operations. Flock Safety, on the other hand, disputes the current misconceptions that led to LA halting the use of the cameras. A company spokesperson told KTLA that Flock had been working with LAPD to ensure their technology included strong privacy protections, strict auditability, clear accountability, and appropriate limits around data access. There is no official timeline on when Los Angeles' authorities will announce their decision on the matter. However, in the wake of the announcement that LAPD would be suspending the use of their Flock cameras, council member Jurado praised the decision. Before the city enters into a new agreement with Flock or any similar company, the public deserves answers. Who owns the data? Who can access it? Has it been shared with outside jurisdictions or federal agencies? Were any searches conducted on behalf of immigration authorities? What role have private donations or the LAPD Foundation played in expanding this network? And what happens to the data already collected? And in the late-breaking news today, several opponents of Flock cameras and other surveillance in general have rallied outside of Los Angeles Police Department's headquarters. This was captured by KNX News.
Today we are demanding no more negotiations, a complete end to this relationship, and also along with that to dismantle the other license plate reader programs as well, which is Motorola, which used to be Vigilant Solution, which Motorola then bought, and Axon International. LAPD has a massive structure. So just last year, or 2024, in their own reports, they found out that LAPD had 1 billion and over 300 million hits on license plate readers just in the city of Los Angeles. 1 billion, 300 and some odd million just in the city of Los Angeles. So all of us here whose cars, so if you look at 4.2 million population, and I'm talking only the city of Los Angeles, we have been tagged over 450 times. So what does that say? It says is that the old maxim of innocent until proven guilty has been completely turned on its head, because now we are all guilty as far as LAPD is concerned, till proven innocent.
And other news that's making the rounds over the past, I want to say 2 months, there's been a lot of conspiracies going around on, I've mostly seen them on YouTube, where there's been a series of 12 or 13 automotive salvage yards that have burnt to a crisp around the country, and people are contemplating that this is a attack on repairing your own car and trying to force people into new cars, and to go so far as say force people into new cars with surveillance and cameras on you and remote control. And I dismissed it as a bunch of hooey, but I don't know, I'm starting to believe now, because came down on my police radio the other day. Collection of cars destroyed in massive Pacoima junkyard fire. So now it's happening in my own backyard. At least 10 vehicles were destroyed as crews battled a massive junkyard fire in Pacoima Thursday. Firefighters were called to the business on the, I was going to say 1200 block, but the 12,100 block of West Brantford Street around 4:45 p.m. Sky 5 footage showed heavy smoke billowing in the air as the collection of vehicles continued burning. The blaze was extinguished in just under an hour. The cause of the fire remains unclear, and arson investigators were notified. So it turns out this was a business known as Swedish Volvo Dismantling and Service, which was a car lot that specialized in old Volvos and Saabs. And that's what got me to believe there might be a little something to this, because we all know big government would love to see a dead brand like Saab be unable to be repaired. And this here I have a little opinion piece from friend of the show, Lauren Fix, that she wrote for CBT News. I'll just read a few excerpts from it because it is very girthy. While most Americans see scrapyard fires as local news, the real story may be unfolding in repair shops, insurance office, and family budgets across the country. So there's nothing accusational in here, but it does bring to light a lot of the consequences, which are undisputable. New vehicle prices remain painfully high. Used vehicle prices are still well above historical norms. For many families, keeping an older vehicle on the road isn't a preference anymore, it's a necessity. That's why a trend developing across the country deserves far more attention than it's getting. America's salvage yards are burning. Industry groups have reported record numbers of fires at recycling facilities in recent years. Much of the public discussion surrounding right to repair focuses on access to diagnostic information, software, and service procedures. Those issues matter. Consumers should have the ability to repair products they own, but access to information is only one piece of the equation. A repair manual doesn't repair a vehicle. Diagnostic access doesn't replace a damaged transmission. The ability to repair something ultimately depends on obtaining the necessary parts at a reasonable cost. Salvage yards have long played an important role in preserving that choice. They provide competition in the parts market and help prevent consumers from being locked into a single source for replacement components, or not having a source at all. As inventory becomes scarcer, that competitive pressure weakens. The result is fewer options and higher costs, or throwing your whole Volvo or Saab in the garbage. Consumers are left with two unpleasant choices: pay significantly more for repairs or replace the vehicle entirely. No single scrapyard fire is going to transform the automotive industry, but that's not the point. The concern isn't one fire, the concern is a pattern. It is a pattern of increasing fires, increasing vehicle complexity, increasing repair costs, increasing insurance premiums, and increasing pressure on the systems that will keep transportation affordable. Viewed individually, each challenge appears manageable. Viewed together, they tell a different story. The next time headlines report another major scrapyard blaze, it may be worth looking beyond the smoke. The real story isn't necessarily what caused the fire. The real story is what was lost, who depended on it, and whether Americans can afford to lose another source of affordable repairs at a time when vehicle ownership is already becoming more expensive by the year. Because the cost of these fires doesn't disappear when the flames are extinguished. The country can debate EV mandates, emissions rules, tariffs, fuel prices, and insurance regulation all day long, but if affordable repairs disappear, none of those debates matter to the family staring at a $6,000 repair bill. It's a very bleak first half of the show, I know. Oh, 833-3DL show. That's 833-335-7469 with your call.
Hi there, this is Tom in Illinois. Really enjoying your podcast, and I have a couple questions for you. What is the most ridiculous, silly feature that you've ever seen on a car? And then, what new feature would you most like to see on introduced on a new car? You know, like what's the next best thing after the cup holder? The new feature I would love to see is a little button on the steering wheel that when you see somebody on the road do something incredibly dangerous or highly illegal, you push the button and it sends the last 20 seconds of video view from your car off to all the insurance companies. And maybe you could even add a little audio commentary from yourself about what you just saw. That would be so much better than road rage. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Have you not been listening to the last 40 minutes of this show, Tom? That sounds, with all due respect, like a terrible idea. I don't know. No more cameras, no more insurance companies. I've been dealing on a personal level with a little insurance issue regarding this house I'm living in for a while with self-reporting inspections and AI cameras. It's a long story, but I don't know. We shouldn't be feeding anything to the insurance companies. But to answer your first question, craziest car features. Now, I haven't been in enough cars at a professional level to come up with a good list of things I find really wonky, but our good friends at Top Gear, and this is from May, so it's somewhat relevant, produced a list of the 21 of the weirdest car optional extras, and I'm not going to go through all 21 because a lot of them are things on $21 million hypercars that aren't even that weird, but just expensive. I handpicked a few of my favorites off of this list. Let's start with the Bentley Bentayga Mulliner fly fishing kit. Of course, a car as opulent as the Bentayga is likely to have a few extravagant optional extras, and the brand's Mulliner Bespoke division also hoped to reel a few people in 2016.
Not funny!
By offering a hand-built fly fishing kit in the boot. Featuring space for all the stuff you'd need for an afternoon by the presumably private riverbank, we can't find too much info on whether many Bentayga buyers took the bait.
Not funny!
Or whether Bentley created a rod for their own backs. With this accessory, maybe it was just a red herring. Going back to the 1950s, the Chrysler Highway Hi-Five. Subjecting your passengers to your terrible music taste is easier than ever these days, but in the 50s, you were largely limited to whatever fuzzy nonsense your local AM radio station was broadcasting. Now, as a broadcast engineer, I take offense to that. AM radio sounded great back then. There was no Wi-Fi interference, and we worked harder, and the processing was better, and yeah. Anyway, Chrysler was one of the first companies to try and tackle this, briefly offering Highway Hi-Fi, an optional dashboard-mounted vinyl record player. It took special records designed to withstand the bumps that came with playing them from a moving car, but this didn't work, and Highway Hi-Fi was discontinued in 1959 after just 4 years. I'm surprised it lasted that long. A Fiat 500L, the newer one, espresso machine. According to some sources we found, the typical Italian drinks anything between 4 and 8 cups of coffee a day. No wonder why they drive everywhere so fast. With such a prestigious consumption of caffeinated goodness, it's no surprise that Italy's biggest car maker saw it fit to offer an onboard espresso machine in the otherwise forgettable 500L people carrier. In a similar vein, Renault out of France had a baguette holder. One of our favorite things about Renault's Reborn 4 and 5 are how distinctively, unashamedly French they feel. Just stepping inside them makes us feel like we could be zipping around the cobbled streets That said, the opinion of a wicker baguette holder attachment for the center console may be pushing our appetite for kitsch to its absolute limits. Oh, who are we kidding? We love it. The mini convertible, I don't even know how to... It's written opinometer. Opominometer? Opomometer? Openomometer? Either way. It's for a convertible car. If you found yourself wondering how much of your time driving it you've spent with the roof down. Which not a lot of people have thought of. That didn't stop Mini from offering its second-gen convertible with the opinometer. An additional dial that told you exactly that. Truly one of the most pointless car options ever, especially because the main analog part of the dial maxed out after just 7 hours. Yeah, it looks like a tachometer. It's literally numbers 1 through 7 on a dial. And I guess when you put your top down, it starts counting in hours. Maybe it's to make sure you don't get too much sun. I don't know. The Volvo heartbeat sensor. We love our 2000s Volvos. And carjacking was a big concern in the 2000s, which prompted Volvo to develop the Personal Car Communicator, a system that, among other things, could detect a heartbeat in your car and alert you via a flashing light on the key fob. Frankly, its use feels a bit limited, especially since it would only work if the alarm had already been triggered. Although if you had a habit of accidentally locking your significant other in the car, it also might come in handy. So before I read this, because I just kind of skimmed this through, and I'm going to vote this for one of my good car ideas. A heartbeat sensor on the key fob. So the car only operates if it does an EKG on you and it knows that is your heartbeat. So if you're stressed, anxious, or had anything greasy, you're not driving your car that day. Or worked out. Let's put that in. And finally, the Nissan Cube shag pile dash topper. We've all been there driving along wishing that a very specific part of our car interior was more reminiscent of the kind of 1970s house where something slightly seedy might have been going on. Thankfully, the Nissan Cube, that's a car I never really liked, but they've kind of grown on me now that you never see them anymore. Thankfully, the Nissan Cube had you covered with the option of a small circle of shag pile carpet that sat on the top center of the dash. Why? Well, firstly, you could use it to pop your sunglasses on to stop them from sliding around. Secondly, they have no other ideas. So, those were the best ones I could find, and I remember reading about some of them in the past. But some of the things I wish I would see inside cars, and I had to think about this for a couple of weeks when I get a little peeved in the car. And these were the things that I wish some cars might have these, but I wish they were in all cars. They need weather beyond the temperature. And I don't want like an internet app on my dash screen that can dial on to weather.com and show me my local forecast that I could just look up on my phone. No. I want the car to have a barometer, a thermometer, and whatever else is on that weird little thing in Grandma's hallway. Because I want to be able to see what the relative humidity is outside at a moment's notice. That also being said, why can't cars ever tell you what the temperature is inside of the car? And I know if you put your Tesla in dog mode, I left my kid in here mode, it'll tell you on the big screen what the interior temperature is so no one smashes your window. But all cars now pretty much have automatic climate control where you set the temperature you want inside the car. But unlike my household thermostat, which shows me what the temperature already is in the house, I want that in the car. I want to know that it's 175 degrees when I get in there in the summer. It should be in plain English. And I want to know that when I set my AC to 50, it's not really 50 in there. It's probably 79 degrees at best. Inside temperature in the car should be standard across the board. And this is my number one. Those other things were somewhat useful features. This is my stupid, but once I say it to you, you're going to wish you had it all along car feature. And I thought of this back in college. and I need to patent pending this, wipers that match the beat of your music. Yeah, it's good, huh? Because there's nothing worse than when you're driving around with your intermittent wipers at a mid-speed and they are hitting off-beat with the song you were listening to. So there should be a setting on every wipers next to the little button that puts on the auto-sensing. Whatever is playing out of my car radio, I want a waveform analyzer running in the background of the car, and I want it to find the beats of all those songs, and I want it to make sure that windshield wiper hits on that beat. Because I'm a big music guy, and I'm an audio guy, and someone who's a little bit smarter at the audio stuff than me, let's make this a thing. Patent pending Driveline Show 2026. Speaking of my favorite music, Jimmy Buffett's car is up for auction. And I had to begin. Jimmy Buffett's music has always had a big influence on my life. But I'm not a parrot head. In the same vein that while I frequently talk about Disneyland on this show, I am not a Disney adult. Yeah, it was maybe 2002 when I first heard Cheeseburger in Paradise at a barbecue my aunt and uncle were throwing, and I thought it was pretty hokey. And then years later on the radio, I would hear Margaritaville and Come Monday and Changes in Latitudes, and I was starting to get it just a little bit. And before you knew it, when I would go up to Rhinelander, home of the Hodag, and take the canoe out on the lake, I was pretty much fixated on playing Jimmy Buffett's The Songs You Know by Heart on my iPod, on my headphones, as a relaxing little beach-esque nautical way of perusing around the lake. And then I was growing beyond Cheeseburger and Margaritaville and Shades and Latitudes, and I was getting a little bit deeper. I was listening to Son of a Sailor and Grapefruit Juicy Fruit and Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw and more of his hits. And that went through most of high school. I was pretty much limited to about 16 Jimmy Buffett songs. And then around my graduation, my friend Diana stuck Jimmy Buffett's cover, A Brown-Eyed Girl, just randomly on my very long graduation party mix CD, and my interest expanded a little more. And that summer, I had always skipped the beginning of The Captain and the Kid when I heard the beginning of it, and I finally started to listen to it all the way through, which became one of my favorite songs by Jimmy. And then I was adding more things to my listening repertoire, such as Manana, Nautical Wheelers, and eventually I borrowed License to Chill from a friend's dad at the time, and this was more 2004 rather than 70s Jimmy Buffett, and I was listening to his country collabs like Conky Tonkin and Costa Carolina. And then I expanded more and more in college. I was listening to Living It Up and Captain America and West Nashville Grand Ballroom Gown when I found out that it was the one song. The promo records of this actually had a warning on the front not to play it on the air because it was the first and only Jimmy Buffett song up until Overkill to drop the F-bomb. And then in my community college year, Buffett Hotel came out and I was listening to Summer's Cool, which we had in rotation on our college radio station as it was in one of those music libraries that sent out all the current new songs. So I was listening to that, and then it grew more and more, and then I was getting into really, really, really deep cuts, such as If the Phone Doesn't Ring, It's Me, and Beyond the End off Last Mango in Paris. And all the way up until a couple years ago, like when we lost Jimmy, and I still haven't processed the loss of him. I remember it was over Labor Day weekend. I took a long staycation. I wanted to finish my Corvair engine because later that month I had already entered my Corvair into a car show. I took a week off I still had the engine out of it, and I had like 2 weeks to go. There was no chance that car was ever going to be done. But I remember the Saturday morning, it rained that day, in Los Angeles. I remember the news that hearing Jimmy had passed of skin cancer, and I still haven't really processed it. But after he passed, his last album came out, and at this point, it was in 2024. I was driving to across the country to Rhinelander, home of the Hodag, and I heard a song on the Beatles channel, mind you, on Sirius XM. My gummy just kicked in, and I was like, why the hell are they playing a Jimmy Buffett song on the Beatles channel? Not that I had anything against it, but normally I hear Jimmy on Margaritaville. And it turns out Paul McCartney played... So the long story on that. The song is based on a story where Jimmy and Paul McCartney and their wives were all at a party together in the Hamptons because they were good friends apparently. And I think it was Paul McCartney's wife was just like at the dinner table, like, look, I'm remembering, I don't have this story written down in front of me. I'm basing this all off memory, but I think it was Paul McCartney's wife was like, you know, just kind of sitting there vibing, and she was asked if she was okay, and her response was, my gummy just kicked in. And then Jimmy turned that story into a song, and Paul McCartney played bass on it, which is a great story. And I only found out then that Paul McCartney and Jimmy were good friends, and the last song I have on my list of Jimmy Buffett songs that shaped me is Bubbles Up, which was on that same album that came out after he passed. And Paul McCartney himself said that and Bubbles Up was the greatest vocal performance that Jimmy had ever given in his career. So, I made a playlist on Spotify. If you go on Spotify and search Driveline Jimmy Buffett, you can go through all the songs I just mentioned and live vicariously through me a lifetime of discovering Jimmy's music. But, back to the cars. So there is a Jimmy Buffett car for sale right now that I will get to, but Jimmy Buffett was a renowned car guy, and there's been a few articles written on Haggerty about Jimmy Buffett's relationship with cars, going back to dozens of stories reported that Buffett, with his friend and fellow singer-songwriter Jerry Jeff Walker, fixed up Walker's 1947 Packard and then headed south from Coconut Grove in Florida all the way down to Key West, whereas Jimmy stayed in Key West and Jerry returned to Coconut Grove. But Jimmy had a few other cars along the way. Most notably a 1963 Ford Falcon Sprint convertible. And it turned out he owned a few of those. One of them went up for auction in 2024. And I remember when I heard this car went up for sale, this was about 6 months after his passing. And it went up for sale at GAA Classic Cars. And I was like, man, I really want this thing. It was a 1963 Ford Falcon Sprint. I thought I had a write-up on it here. Yes. Jimmy Buffett's personal Falcon convertible ready for beach duty. So, yeah, GAA Classic Cars, Buffett's 1963 Ford Falcon Sprint convertible looks ready for top-down summer cruising and features some interesting modifications. When it was purchased in 2002, the Falcon reportedly had just 8,578 miles on the odometer. In the 20 years since, it's racked up only 3,300 more. The listing doesn't specify, but we assume that with that mileage, the engine is the original 260 that came with the car when new. The small block convertible was hot rodded by Buffett, who added a 4-barrel intake and a matching Holly carb for a bit more power. The most noticeable addition to the car was a roll bar that serves as a surfboard rack, proving that if you don't need a surf wagon or even a hardtop to bring your board to the beach. A board is included in the sale as pictured on the car. Buffett also added a sound system with a trunk-mounted amplifier and subwoofer. A Fender Squier Stratocaster with Buffett's autograph is also part of the auction. So how much does all this cost? Well, a look at the Haggerty price guide shows a 1963, and this is circa 2024, Shows a 1963 Ford Falcon Sprint convertible, prices down just a bit over the year, with a number 2 excellent condition worth $27,800 currently. That said, the car's provenance should come into play. Haggerty Price Guide publisher Dave Kinney weighed in, Jimmy Buffett might not be remembered as a car guy in the same vein as Paul Newman or other celebrities, but he was through and through. That, and since parent heads are an enthusiastic bunch, I expect bidding on Buffett's Falcon is likely to go above its condition value. Now, I thought I remembered bidding on this auction because GAA, they put their auctions on proxy bid prior to the actual sale event, and I cannot find anything in my emails or account that I bid on this car, because normally you will get an email from proxy bid when you're outbid on an item, but perhaps when it went live it was already out of my price range and I didn't, but either way. So $27,800 was the estimate for that condition of a Ford Falcon. So what did Jimmy Buffett's plus a surfboard plus a guitar go for? $258,500. So yeah, I had no chance in hell. But the car we're talking about today is not Jimmy Buffett's Ford Falcon Sprint. It is a 1958 Metropolitan. Jimmy Buffett's 1958 Nash Metropolitan convertible headed to auction. A piece of music history with a beach town pedigree is set to find a new owner this summer as the 1958 Nash Metropolitan convertible, once owned by singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett, goes up for auction. This will be on July 25th from GAA Auctions as well. Now, interestingly, this Nash Metropolitan, well, you can't even call it a Nash Metropolitan. It's kind of a misnomer at that point, because by 1958, American Motors had sunset the Nash and Hudson brands, which they sold Metropolitans under, and the brand of the car just became a Metropolitan alone. In the same vein that Dodge Rams are now just sold as Rams, and Land Rover is trying to distance the Defender and Discovery names from the Land Rover name and just sell them as their own name. But I digress. This car, I'm going to go back a little bit. This car is sold before many times. So let's look at Nash Metropolitans as a whole. Personally, my first exposure to the Nash brand was in the 1958 hit song Beep Beep by the Playmates. I never really thought about the brand again until I saw an ambassador up close at the now shuttered Culver City Haggerty Garage and Social. Seeing a pin and badge on it made me realize that these were something special, and the ties between the Wisconsin brand and Italian design house Pininfarina are a story for another time because it's very interesting. But as far as the Metropolitan specifically, I still never really gave them a second look for long, because out of all the Nash brands sold in the 1950s, they were the only ones not wearing the Pininfarina badge, so I never wanted one as much. But I'd see him at British car shows now and again, which I didn't understand. But when I found out about Jimmy's Metropolitan, suddenly my interest was piqued. Maybe this was a cool car. So the Nash Metropolitan is an American automobile that was marketed from 1953 until 1962. Manufactured in England, well designed and marketed in the United States by Nash and its successor companies. It was built entirely by the British Motor Corporation, factories using many existing BMC parts. Nash was positioning this new product for the post-war market as a personal use automobiles. These specific use vehicles were focused as a second car for women.
Ah, crap! It's a girl's car!
Or an economical commuter car. The Metropolitan was also aimed at returning Nash to overseas markets. However, Nash's management calculated that building such a car from scratch in the U.S. would be impossible, as the tooling cost would have been prohibitive. The only cost-effective option was to build overseas using existing mechanical components. engine, transmission, rear end, suspension, brakes, electrical, leaving only the tooling cost for body panels and other unique elements. With this in mind, National Motors negotiated with several European companies. On October 5th, 1952, they announced they had selected Austin Motor Company, by then part of BMC, and Fisher and Ludlow, which also became part of BMC in 1953, both English companies based in Birmingham, England and vicinity. Fisher and Ludlow would produce the bodywork, the mechanicals would be provided, and the Austin Motor Company would perform the final assembly. This was the first time an American-designed car was exclusively marketed in North America and had been built entirely in Europe, which explains why they were at British car shows. The styling for all Nash vehicles was then an amalgam of designs from Pininfarina and his design house of Italy and the in-house Nash design team. The Nash models from the Ambassador to the Metropolitan utilized similar design features, including fully enclosed front wheels, notched pillow-style door pressing, bar-style grille, etc. Compared to the typical American car of the 1950s, the Metropolitan was considered remarkably nimble by many early testers. The consensus is that the Metropolitan isn't just fun to look at, but it's fun to drive too. Owners of the cars reported that the Metropolitan is a good thing in a small package. Automotive industry veteran and largest publisher of automotive books at the time, Floyd Clymer, took several Metropolitans through his tests. He abused a 1954 Metropolitan convertible and got the surprise of his life when its performance was far better than he expected, and that he felt very safe in the car, and it may as well be that Nash started a new trend in American motoring. Perhaps the public is now ready to accept a small car. Clymer also took a 1957 Metropolitan hardtop through a grueling 2,912-mile road test that even took him 14,100 feet up Pikes Peak. He summed up his experience that, "I cannot praise the Metropolitan too highly. It is a fascinating little car to drive. Its performance is far better than one would expect, and the ride is likewise more than expected." According to Collectible Auto Magazine, the car was described in Car Life's review as a big car in miniature that was fun to drive, ideal for a second car in the family, while Motor Trend was not alone in regarding the rear utility seat as a joke. So it wasn't until the fourth gen of the Metropolitan that you actually had a trunk that you could open. You had to fold down the back seat to store anything. But Motor Trend praised the car's economy. Its test Metropolitan returned 39.4 mpg at 45 miles an hour, 27.4 mpg at 60 miles an hour, and 30.1 mpg in traffic, which makes this car comparable to pretty much anything that's on the road today. A road and track road test recorded acceleration from 0 to 60 in 22.4 seconds, but it was almost half the Volkswagen Beetle's 39.2 seconds. Notable owners of Metropolitans include Jimmy Buffett, of course, Bridget Fonda, Steve Jobs, I think it was one of his first cars, Bogey's Garage, YouTuber, Princess Margaret, which was stolen within a year after it was gifted to her, Paul Newman, and Elvis Presley. So, soon to be Justin Basic. I'm sold. I want one. Might make a good little daily driver, or at least get some good content out of it. So, going back specifically to the car owned by Jimmy Buffett, like I said before, this car sold numerous times. The best write-up of it was the last time it sold by Barrett Jackson in 2024 Palm Beach auction. Barrett Jackson writes, powered by the original 1491cc four-cylinder engine and three-speed manual drivetrain. It had a body rest and paint restoration in 2008, stored in an HVAC-controlled garage previously owned by musician Jimmy Buffett in Key West, Florida. 1958 Metropolitan convertible was originally sold by Ty Houck, owner of Ragtop Motor Cars in West Palm Beach, Florida. Buffett sold the car back to Ragtops in 2008. It was then purchased by the current owner and transported to Maryland, where it went through a body restoration, receiving new metal floor pans, rocker panels, adjusted doors and door frames, straightened and re-chromed bumpers, and the whole car was repainted. So basically, you're not driving Jimmy's car at all. No material changes to the engine or 3-speed drivetrain were made. It was stored in an HVAC-controlled garage and only driven minimally for personal use. During the restoration, the driver mirror was moved to the door and the passenger mirror was added. A framed photograph of Jimmy Buffett in the vehicle is included in the sale. And the title's branded "Not Actual Miles" in big bold letters. So when this car was sold, Jimmy Buffett in 2008 sold the car back to Ty, and he sold it in the collector cars of Fort Lauderdale auction put on by R.M. Sotheby's, and it brought an astounding... I mean, what do you think? We know Jimmy's last car sold for $258,500. So what did this car in 2008, given in mind Jimmy was still alive, but what did this little Nash, not Nash, sell for in 2008? $19,250. So very, very attainable. And at the 2024 Palm Beach auction, at no reserve, after Jimmy's passing, it sold for a whopping $66,000, which is only about 3 times as much as it sold for in 2008. So, frankly, I think the Metropolitan is a much cooler car than the Falcon, and it is a lot cheaper, and we'll find out on July 25th what the current market thinks of this car. I hope it goes up. But I also kind of want it. But I don't have $66,000. So, I do want to play. I talked a lot about Jimmy's music, and I avoided playing most of it because I don't want this to get pulled, but I'm hoping if I play this little snippet on here, this is the one song off Jimmy Buffett's Far Side of the World album. It was recorded in 2001, so this was while he had the car. This is his one song that mentions the Metropolitan.
Don't need to feel important or famous. No limos or my little Nash car. One lucky man with my feet in the sand. Tonight I just need my guitar.
Dubbing this in was actually the first time I ever heard this song. I had yet to dig this deep into Jimmy Buffett's catalog. I'm still finding new songs by him that I've never listened to before. Right now, Delaney Talks to Statues has become my frequently replayed on my iPhone in the car song, but I need to add this to my library. And I'm going to throw this on the Spotify playlist too after Bubbles Up. But tonight I just need my guitar is this song. Search Driveline Jimmy Buffett on Spotify to take my lifetime Jimmy Buffett journey. But that's it for this week. Hopefully I'll keep the momentum going with this show. In the meantime, call me anytime, 833-335-7469. Leave a voicemail. Follow me at driveline.show and Just Back on Instagram. Email justin@drivelineshow.com, and you can always buy me a coffee at Driveline Show. Talk to you later. Bye-bye now.